Hey guys, this is SGT, and I have a very special Labor Day update with economist and money manager Woody O'Brien. Woody, welcome back.
Great to be with you again, Sean.
Say, we were talking a little bit offline before this conversation started here officially, and you made the point, which I agree with, which is the average person in this country is completely unprepared for the collapse that is coming.
They really are, and I've said many times, anything that someone does to get prepared is better than doing nothing. My crazy neighbor who has 10,000 rolls of toilet paper and nothing else, he's more prepared than most people because he knows that toilet paper will be bartered to get food or to get other things he wants. There are so many things beyond the gold and silver that people can do, not just having storable food. One of my favorite ones is people have to worry about where they're going to get water when there's no electricity for their well. Having somebody come for a couple $100 and put a hand pump on your well, I have to tell you, in preparation for economic collapse, that's worth 1,000 ounces of silver to me to know it is that I'll always be able to have a water. People who are stacking firewood who don't even have a fireplace. There's so many things that you can do to have things. I even have a friend of mine who says he's got 15 cases of Jack Daniels, and that's his barter goods. You have to really think outside the box of just gold and just silver, because the truth is those things, as wonderful as they have been as an investment, as terrific as I think that they will be, they really depend on you being able to find something who has something you need that's willing to trade it for the gold and silver. That's not a certainty if you study collapses around the world, that you'll be able to find a barter partner for it. So it's good to have as many other kinds of supplies and necessities as you can.
Well, last time we talked, it's been a while. Why don't you give us that list you have of the 100 things you're going to want to have in a collapse? You've got a list that you prepared, and it's a pretty darn good list. How do people get that from you real quick?
All they need to do now is go to my website, abolishfiatslavery.com, and there's links with that list and lots of other interesting and good ideas.
Oh, sure, I see it. It's a 100 emergency prep list.
And this is something from Bosnia or Serbia from years ago, which was really kind of a country that was the equivalent of life in, say, a state like Tennessee in the U.S. And it was basically, these are the things that once collapse occurs, you're just not going to be able to find. And I think, too, this latest thing that we had in the East with the hurricane, and we had an earthquake, and the same week we had a hurricane. People have to realize it's not just economic collapse that can cause you to be in these kind of circumstances. It's Mother Nature. It's earthquakes. There's all kinds of scenarios for which it is if what you have available in your house is no electricity, no water, and a couple of days' worth of food and refrigerators that will start having everything in them go bad, you're going to be at the mercy of your neighbors and the government, exactly like people were after Katrina in New Orleans. You have to begin with the premise that even if you think this government cares about you, which I don't think anybody could imagine that these days, they are just not logistically set up to be able to take care of millions of people. There's 310 million people in the United States and America. I don't think that 30 million of them are prepared for a disaster with no food and no water. They're not prepared for one that will last 10 days. They're going to be entirely at the mercy of people who are prepared. And I would say even the people who aren't prepared, if you don't have a firearm to defend your preparation, you're not going to have it very long.
Let's get your brief take, since you're an economist, on the state of this economy, because the non-farm payroll numbers came out on Friday, Woody, and they were abysmal. So being that this is a Labor Day update, those of us that are still employed really ought to thank their lucky stars, because things are not looking up in this country from a employment standpoint. And with the continued deindustrialization of this country, actively, on purpose, the future really only looks bleaker and bleaker.
It sure does. There's absolutely almost no organic job creation that's going on out in the economy. The only job creation that seems to occur is government jobs and contractors in private sectors that are tied to government contracts. It's more of the issue of our past economic manipulation hasn't worked. It won't work in the future. We can have more stimulus or lower interest rates. We're not going to be able to push on the string. The manipulation isn't the answer. The manipulation is the cancer. And if you're one of those lucky 80% that have a job, count your lucky stars and act like you may not have one 3 months or 6 months from now, because the economy is in a free fall that's not like a bowling ball dropping the ground. It's more like if a leaf falls from a tree on a windy day, it's going to blow up and it's going to blow down and it's going to blow up. And that is by design. And the reason is just given the nature of how markets work, if the Dow was going to go to 3,000 and it was going to do it in a day, there wouldn't be a lot of opportunities for firms like Goldman Sachs to be making money, as opposed to if it goes to 3,000 and drifts there up and down like a leaf falling from a tree. So I would love to tell people that I've got something optimistic to say about the future of the economy, but unfortunately I don't. And this goes back to the collapse in 2008 where we had all these props and bailouts. The truth is, if we had just let the collapse occur, when organically it wanted to occur, and you say, well, where would we be now if we had done that? The answer is we would be in recovery. All this malinvestment and bad debt needs to be liquidated. It needs to be written off. And everything we do to postpone the day of reckoning just increases the debt and increases the pain. And I'm a great believer that Peter Schiff has got this right. The boom is the disease. The bust is the cure. We should get on with the bust so we can get to a bottom where people are wiped out, they go bankrupt, and we can start over from a sound basis where all the debt is paid off.
Well, or forgiven. Now let's talk about that, because there's a lot of smart people talking about the fact that a debt jubilee, a debt forgiveness, eventually this debt Ponzi scheme does need to collapse. It needs to be canceled out. We need to begin anew, but not in the sense that the bankers get to start over and we're all saddled as indentured servants. What is your take on the way that this thing needs to really truly be reset in some sort of way that makes sense for humanity?
Well, I think what you really have is you have to have price discovery where things get to what it is they are actually worth, and the write-downs and write-offs are taken. And I'm not really sure that's a jubilee or a forgiveness as much as it is an acceptance of reality. And I'll give you a perfect example. I'm in the process right now of buying some farmland that several years ago a couple of people paid $350,000 for. They put $50,000 down, and they borrowed $300,000 for a piece of land that wasn't worth anywhere near $300,000 at the time they bought it. It was all a part of the bubble the Fed had blown up. They're now so far underwater. They had the property listed for $129,000. I offered $100,000, which was the land's agricultural value as organic farmland, and my offer was accepted. The bank is now going to have to write off $200,000,
which they created out of thin air.
Which they created out of thin air, and they criminally collected interest on money they created out of thin air. But at the end of the day, when you go, well, unfortunately, every piece of farmland that's near this is going to go dramatically down in value as soon as I close, because that will establish a new value. But again, the value that I'm buying it back is based on something real in economics.
But Woody, I just want to interrupt because, say the $100,000 farmland is built on something real and economic, but the $600 trillion or more in derivatives exposure and outstanding derivatives on the planet is not real. It's not based on anything real. So when we talk about resetting the system and debt forgiveness or debt jubilee, we're talking about getting rid of all of that bogus paper created by the criminal banking cartel. That's what I'm talking about.
That's exactly correct, and it is a recognition of reality that this massive trillion-dollar global Ponzi scheme is chalked to the gills with paper that's worth nothing.
Don't miss part 2. Click here.